Hey, good morning, everyone. So glad you're with us for the Daily Devo today. I'm really excited for our text today. We are going to be digging into the book of Romans again. We were in Romans yesterday, although we're jumping forward several chapters into Romans chapter 12. We're going to be in 12 verses 9 through 21. Dave?
Don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard to serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Be happy with those who are happy and weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people. And don't think you know it all. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge. I will pay them back, says the Lord. Instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. Don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Thanks be to God. Well, I will just say I feel really moved. I'm actually feeling verklempt reading that. I'm just going to dive into a difficult subject here, and hopefully that's okay. But for those of you who don't know kind of my heritage, I come from a Messianic Jewish family, we are Ukrainian Jews. And so these last couple of years have been really difficult for me as I've wrestled with this question of how to love my enemy, as I think about the fact that geopolitics has felt really personal all of a sudden in these last few years. And that last line, it caused me to almost tear up. I'm don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. I just acknowledge that I have wrestled with how to love people who want to kill me, theoretically, or would want to kill me, or want to kill people like me, people who I share genetic lineage with, or cultural lineage with. Now, I recognize I'm relatively safe in the US, but it is a unnerving thought to think about people in the world, political forces, military forces, who are doing harm to people, kind of like me. And when I read the news these days, I find myself in a space that I'm often not proud of, where when a side of people who I view as the aggressor and I don't like suffers, it makes me happy. And I don't love that. And I recognize that that's not a healthy impulse, even if they are perpetrating injustice and they are wrong and they should be stopped. The joy in it, or the happiness in it, is something that I don't love. And I know it's not of Christ, even if stopping it is a good thing. Stopping the violence and stopping the injustice is a good thing. And so I think this is getting to a really core human challenge that I have wrestled with on a deep level these last few years in particular, which is how to be patient in the face of injustice, how to hold on to my humanity and also not deny the humanity of an evildoer, even if I believe we should be committed to stopping their evil deeds. It's very difficult to live in this liminal space of patience. How do we conquer evil by doing good and not let it conquer us? How do we, it is such a difficult thing. This is where the rubber meets the road in the gospel, to pray for our enemies, to turn the other cheek. I mean, this is very similar to the Sermon on the Mount. This is really the same basic principle, to not take revenge, but to leave that righteous anger for God. For the scriptures say that God will handle it. This has not escaped God's eyes, God's gaze. So I think one thing that I have to remind myself in is that, I said this in a sermon a couple of weeks ago, that there is such a thing as righteous indignation, and there is also such a thing as self-righteous indignation. And I think oftentimes I lull myself into the false belief that if only I had power, or the person I want to have power had power, if only I was in control, then it would be different. I would prosecute justice in a way that is right and good and true. I wouldn't malign it. I'm the exception. I can be trusted with power. And I think on some level, everyone who's ever achieved significant power has probably told themselves that, especially the folks who have misused it so profoundly throughout human history, or misuse it today in our contemporary world. And so I think this is in some ways a warning against believing that we are capable of being fair judges. It is a lie to think that we can balance in the way that God can balance grace and truth and justice and judgment and mercy in a way that is truly true and is reflective of God's character. I think we want to think we can, but truth is that's way beyond our capacity. And so what God calls us to do is to trust and wait and know that God will handle it. And so in the meantime, our call in that act of patience is to love our neighbors, love our enemy as ourselves, to not succumb to the trap of thinking we have to solve it. Because when we think we have to solve it, we will very quickly resort to the ways and means of the world. And we will then engage in the very evil that we are so disgusted and grieved by. And so it's almost paradoxical, but patience is subversive. And I think over the long term is transformative. And it reflects a deep and profound hope of who Jesus is. And so I recognize that in these spaces and these difficult conversations, and I recognize I just jumped us right into the deep end today, so thanks for bearing with me. But in these spaces, I think that can so often be maligned as passivity, but I think it's actually transformative, countercultural, and truly points the world towards a different way, a third way, a Jesus honoring way, where we can say the truth about injustice. We can call sin sin, and we can also still say, and the sinner is still human and loved. And that's the kind of space that I think Paul is calling us to in this sort of radical patience where we trust in God. So that's my thoughts, Dave. I'm curious what you think. How's this text grabbing you today?
Well, I appreciate what you shared. It was beautiful. And I want to highlight one of the pieces that you said, because I think that this is what so often makes people dismiss Jesus's message and Jesus himself and Jesus's wisdom, right? The truth that the Spirit brings, is that they misunderstand something. They think we're called to love evildoers. Well, they just assume then that means that we're not seeing evil. We're having to deny the reality of evil. And this is the key thing: is if I'm going to love those who do evil, well, then I need to acknowledge, the only way that's possible is if I'm actually acknowledging that they're doing evil, that they are evildoers, that they are guilty. And forgiveness. People say, "Oh, forgive and forget." I say, no, whoa. That's definitely not the call. We're called to forgive. We're not called to forget, because those are not, like, they don't build on each other. They are different responses to evil. One is to forgive, which is to acknowledge the evil, and it's this powerful spiritual response to it that does not just add more evil for evil for evil for evil, and in this just race to the bottom. But instead, there's this way of dealing with it. But the other possibility is let's forget it. Let's pretend it didn't happen, which feels false and it feels like betrayal to whoever was hurt, whether it's me or the other people that were hurt. And I think there's a reason that this kind of impulse to justice that God has given all of us. All right, we're made in the image of God. We have his impulse to justice in us. It's in our DNA. And so, of course, yes, we've got the love of God. We also have the justice of God, God's love for justice. And so, of course, we want justice here. And it does offend us. And I think that if we think we're being told, oh, just pretend it doesn't away, just enjoy everyone, like everyone, they're all wonderful. When we hear that message, which is a lie, that is not what Jesus said, then what people can do is, well, then Jesus, I mean, I can't trust him.
Jesus doesn't get it. Yeah.
He doesn't get it. Yeah. He doesn't get it. And I can't believe that. And because there's just something in us. In fact, I would say it's the imago Dei in us that is resisting that because it is not true. And so that's why I think reading this passage over and over and over and over again is, I mean, just so great. And two of the promises that are here. The first is the promise, God is not saying, hey, forget about justice. God's saying, you can't do it well, but I can. Right? I can bring justice. Oh boy, can I bring justice. But the thing is the justice he brings is actually just. That's the big difference. The justice that I bring is rarely just. And, it's just probably going to be returning evil for evil and perpetuating more, making more evil, compounding the evil. But so we get the two promises. The first is, I will take revenge, God says. Don't you do it. I will do it. Right? And he says, I will pay them back. So God is going to bring justice. Justice will happen. God is not asking you to give up on that. He's just asking you to stop believing that you can do it.
Yeah.
So that's the first promise. Justice will happen. The second promise is, in fact, that there is power in what seems like weakness. And so he says, if your enemy is hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their head. And how many of us have had that experience where, I feel like this was junior high, right? And yet we all do it kind of throughout our lives in other ways, where I say something really caustic and mean to somebody, and instead of them coming back with another put down and like, right? And in a sense, their evil response makes my initial evil look justified. But when they come back with something kind, it's actually infuriating because I'm humiliated now. Because now my sin is just so obvious to everyone, including me. And there is this incredible power in not responding with power. And I think that's what's coming out here, that being able to, in fact, show yourself to be kind and loving, which is what makes the original sin now seem so grotesque. And I think the burning coals of shame, it's not just like, now you feel bad, you jerk. That's not it. That's what allows for the conviction, right? These burning coals, the fire throughout the Old Testament is going to actually be the thing that exposes. It's going to burn away the dross so that the gold can be purified. That these burning coals are what's going to allow for the purification of that person. So I would say that the two promises are that that justice will happen, and that our apparent powerlessness is incredibly powerful. The last thing I just want to close with, I think this is such an important piece, and I love it. At verse 18, I'm going to do, just because it's the one I know in NIV, which I think is so good. It says, insofar as it depends on you, live at peace with all people. And I think that's such an important thing. I can only do what I can do. And there are people, no matter what I do, who will not live at peace with me.
Yep.
I'm not responsible for that.
Amen.
Now, that doesn't mean then I go, well, now I'm going to go take revenge. No. There are limits. It's not always going to work. All the hospitality that you did, all the kindness, right? All of that stuff that he told us earlier, it's not always going to work. Often it will work. But when it doesn't work, that's when we get these other two promises. But I think there's a lot of times where Christians feel really horrible because there's somebody who's antagonistic towards them. And I think sometimes you can't fix it. Now, it doesn't justify you being antagonistic back. But what it does mean is you can't be filled with guilt because of their sin. All you can do is say, hey, I'm going to do my part and I'll have the invitation open for when they decide they want to receive that.
Yep.